You know, I think back to 2005 where tons of internet companies, and I don't just mean like internet, but I mean companies that had figured out how to use the internet to get traffic and so on, were just like growing like crazy. And at the time, a lot of people thought they were geniuses, right? When in fact, they were fairly ordinary people who had just gotten into a growth market and a growth company. And what I was kind of conditioned to think about that was, yeah, see, you're not really geniuses, you just were in the right place at the right time, and sort of a self-condemnation in that. But there's another side to it, which is, if you're in the right place, you don't have to be a genius.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you tell a story or two about companies that everybody thinks they were geniuses and they had really just chosen the right place to set up shop?
I think Filofax is a very good example of that. I mean, that was the first serious investment that I made. And this was a company which in the 1960s, late 60s and early 70s, and particularly in the early 1980s, was spectacularly successful. It wasn't a big company, but they made these personal organizers. You may not, many people may not know what a personal organizer is. It's not the electronic version. It's like a wallet, and inside you've got a ring binder and you've got papers which, you used to organize your social life and your business life.
Sort of like Franklin planners and that kind of thing?
Exactly. And so you have a calendar and you have maybe a map of the New York subway or the London tube and stuff, all the stuff like that.
Yep.
So you carry this stuff around and you organize your life according to it. And for a time it became very fashionable and it was a very, very successful product. And the people who ran this company were in the right place at the right time. They made a fortune out of this business. But then, the wheels began to fall off after 1987, which was when there was a stock market crash in the middle of the big bull market. And the management got it completely wrong. What they thought was that the yuppie had died. So their view was that actually the big problem was that there weren't any rich professionals anymore. And I remember sitting on the roof of a house in Brighton in the sun, because I like the sun, and reading about this. And it was pretty much an open invitation from a guy called David Koch, who was the chairman and chief executive of the company at the time, executive chairman, to come and rescue his company. So I actually then walked down the street to the lanes, the sort of very trendy little area in Brighton where you've got all these nice cute boutiques and shops and so on. And I went into shops which were selling Filofaxes, and I talked to the shop assistant and I said, I'm looking for a personal organizer. There's this Filofax here, but what are all these other things? Because they had, one section of Filofaxes and they had 3 sections of other personal organizers. And he said, well, you can buy a Filofax if you want. They're very trendy, they're very nice, but it's 2.5 times the price of this thing, which is called a microfile, and the microfile basically does the same thing. And I said to him, okay, let me have a look at the microphone. He said, yeah, it's got the same content, it's got the same tube map, it's got all that sort of stuff. I said, how can it possibly be 2.5 times cheaper? And he said, well, I don't really know. It's not leather. I won't pretend that the cover is leather, but you can see it's a nice cover. It will last just as well, and probably doesn't get spots on like leather gets spots on, and so on and so forth. And actually, the problem that Filofax had wasn't that the market had disappeared. The problem with Filofax was that it had been a star business, and in fact, the market was still growing at more than 10% a year, so the market growth qualified. But that a competitor had come in and was challenging Filofax for the market leadership position. So I thought about this for a bit, and then I talked to some of my friends and colleagues and said to them, well, there's no reason, if microfile is not yet as big as Filofax, why Filofax can't beat them off. All it needs is a lower price. They've come in and they've reduced the price by more than half, but why can't Filofax do what they're doing? You know, not provide leather, you know, provide the product a lot cheaper. And so we sort of worked it out, and I talked to the people running Filofax and the rest of it. Yeah, they did all sorts of silly things, like they had their own, you know, they had their own warehouses when they didn't need them. They could buy that from a third-party supplier much better. You know, they did their own creation of the holes, you know, and you know, quite frankly, you know, someone else could do that a lot cheaper for them. They bought their paper from the most expensive Scottish paper mills. They could buy them from Finland, you know, at half the price for the paper. You know, they didn't need to have the best British leather, etc., etc. So, you know, we managed to redesign the product. We halved the price, so it was a little bit more expensive. It was still sold at a 15% price premium to the competing product, Microfile, and then which was important for the image of, you know, because the image still existed for Filofax. People weren't prepared to pay 2.5 times more, but they were prepared to pay 15% more, which we did from a little bit of research talking to retailers. And within 3 years, we had 4 times the volume that we had before. And therefore, our revenues actually went up, even though our price was cut in half. And you know, that was the first of my investments, and it went probably the only one that went completely according to plan.